Our friends at Disney sent me the 4K Blu-ray of The Last Jedi to check out, and boy, am I glad that they did. This was an exceptional experience to dive back into this movie, this admittedly controversial and divisive movie that has pissed a lot of people off. I really was impressed by this movie the first time that I saw it, and then I've gone back and forth kind of like a tennis match or a ping pong ball of my emotions about whether I really liked it or I had major problems with it.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
That was a cheap move.
I've never had a fault with the production quality or the beauty of this movie, and 4K really kind of does an amazing job at showcasing that and making you kind of understand the the effort that went into building something gorgeous. And all of the behind-the-scenes stuff is so fun to watch, and I would recommend that if you are going to watch this again, and chances are pretty good that you are. If you're watching me on Electric Playground, there's a pretty good shot that you're going to go and either rent this or buy this digitally or buy the 4K Blu-ray. You're going to see it again. But when you do, let's say when you do, watch the behind the scenes first and get an idea of what Rian Johnson was aiming for with this movie, and get an appreciation for the artist and the human that, I think has kind of dealt with a lot of the backlash about this movie in as sort of mature a way as he could, but it couldn't have been easy to read all of these, thank you social media, to read all of this hate, about his choices and his decisions, and not that some of the anger isn't justified either, Now, this is the fourth time that I've seen this movie, and although the behind the scenes really gives me an understanding of why some of these decisions were made and some of the plot details, not everything is satisfying. I will say that after seeing this again and watching all the behind the scenes, especially this fantastic documentary, The Director and the Jedi, which is primarily about the friction that existed between Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker and Rian Johnson, the writer-director of this movie, and the choices that he made for Luke. But I watched all of that, and when you watch it and then you watch the movie again and you recognize that there is this he said kind of element that's happening between Luke and Kylo Ren, and Rey is going back and forth trying to figure out what the truth is, because that's the central element with Luke Skywalker's arc here, and I don't think it's examined effectively enough in the picture to make us understand how this unbelievably valuable hero in the original trilogy, this farm boy that grows up to become the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy, can end up becoming this hermit that hates everybody and everything and just doesn't want to be talked to. And it's very hard to believe that based on the plot that's given to us in this picture, and it's mostly because we don't get enough screen time with Luke and Kylo Ren to see what happened at the Jedi Temple. Why did Luke get so downhearted and frustrated about his own ability to change Kylo Ren for the good? How could he let his best friend's son and his sister's son choose the path of the dark side? It's not really given to us with enough punch and enough effect. You understand the reasons. I mean, Luke he felt powerless, and he felt like if he continued with this Jedi struggle, that it was always going to be the Jedi and the Sith, and you understand that watching the movie again, but also through a lot of the interviews that we have with Rian Johnson and a lot of the candid discussions that we kind of eavesdrop between Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill. I get all that, but we just don't explore it enough in the movie, and so that's a major issue that I have, with The Last Jedi, especially seeing it again. But I feel like the reason why we have this major issue is because Rian Johnson was inundated with pressures. He had to, sort of live up to all of our nostalgic expectations with the characters and the cast that we've known and loved for many, many years.
Skywalker, missed you, have I?
He also had to kind of really stretch in new details and make us care more about Rey and Poe and Finn. And he had a massive idea to make this an incredibly important, forward-moving production that really got people to think of Star Wars in new ways. He also wanted to create his own artistic expression here and leave his thumbprint, so it didn't just feel like he was remaking a previous Star Wars movie. So he had a lot of balls to juggle, and he didn't have enough time, and I feel like he maybe didn't have enough budget to deliver everything that he wanted to do. And that release date was there, like the machine of Star Wars is get it done. Because we all know that the industry around Star Wars is going to be huge and it's going to go on forever. And so they've got to kind of also inject that kind of moment in there too. I think all of it, though, is undermined by the fact that the weak link in this chain is the Finn and Rose subplot, where we are introduced to Rose, terrific actor, like the character, didn't believe for a moment that there was anything heartfelt or true or really sort of beautiful about the relationship that she discovers with Finn. I just wasn't along for that ride. I know I'm not the only one, but that whole Canto Bight sequence is so superfluous. As beautiful as it is, and as we discover in the behind the scenes, it's probably the most expensive set piece and most expensive moments in the movie, but they're just not believable. We don't believe those fuzzy creatures. We don't really believe those kids that are kind of set up to be what the future of Star Wars is going to be. And it's so disconcerting and disappointing to see it again and see it so blatantly stick out like a sore thumb. It is the Finn and Rose Canto Bight subplot, especially because it's a mission that fails. It doesn't seem to have a lot of ramifications. The potential sacrifice that Finn is going to make at the end that would give this film a huge emotional wallop is sabotaged by Rose, and it just feels forced again right there. It feels like they could have not been in the movie and it would have been a better movie, or that whole plot, that subplot could have been not in there. Finn could have been trying to work with Poe on the I don't know. I didn't write the movie. I know I just don't like that stuff. And it's hard to watch it again, especially because we see amazing characters like, Captain Phasma just gotten rid of, in such a dismissive way when she's such a unique new force in here, And we also see the death of Snoke, and that's unsettling but cool. I thought that sequence was, beautifully framed and beautifully choreographed, and everybody does a great job there. It's one of the most exciting fight sequences in all of the Star Wars movies. I think we could deal with a lot of these big shockers, the fact that we don't really get to know who Rey's parents are, the fact that Snoke dies, the fact that Luke dies, the fact that we see Luke just really doesn't want to come back and be a hero. All of these things I think we could have dealt with, but when you stack on this silly plot with Rose and Finn, she's falling in love with him, and they kind of do a mission, and they kind of have a reason to do this, but they kind of don't need to. And then it's like the Star Tours sequence on Snoke's Star Destroyer, and the bad guys all just sort of appear from stage left and right, and they're pointing at these guys. And then BB-8 is piloting an AT-ST. It's just so stupid and just unbelievably cheeseball that you're lifted right out of that moment. And it deflates the power that the Last Jedi really could have had. And don't get me wrong, there is tremendous power in this movie. There's lots to hang onto and be super entertained by. But yeah, it's like a big chunk of this movie does not work. And it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, And then you can stack that with some of these other choices that feel like they're very limiting. It feels less about sort of expanding into what's next and more about, well, that's all done and finished and finite. There's also this tremendous sadness. There's a lot of unexplored opportunities, like a terrific send-off for Princess Leia that could have happened in this film. The lack of real moment for Admiral Akbar's death, I loved Laura Dern in this, by the way. I think she's great, and I love that she has this really cool dramatic moment, but I almost feel like that's kind of a waste too, because she was a cool character, and it would have been nice to see them flip that around and Holdo kind of take over as the new general for the Resistance. I also like the arc that Poe goes on. He has to kind of learn that to be a hero, it's not always just charge right in, and Oscar Isaac is terrific in this. And I love Daisy Ridley. She's amazing as Rey. I think she just gives it everything she's got. It's a little unrealistic that she's got all of this ability without really training. And it's weird that she kind of gets trained but doesn't, from a guy that doesn't want to. There's a lot of vagueness and ambiguity in this movie. It should have been tighter. And I think Rian Johnson had that doubt in there. But I don't know how you make one of these massive pictures with all of this expectation without having some of that doubt. And like he's an artist and he's got to go out there and strike out there. And he made some incredibly memorable moments in this movie. And from my vantage point, some mistakes and some missteps. Still, this is an exceptional Blu-ray to pick up. It's fascinating to watch the making of stuff and the behind-the-scenes stuff and the interviews there, and just the honesty and the openness that's on display. You know, these are incredibly complex undertakings making these films. As we're seeing with the Disney stories that are happening with the changeovers with directors and things like that, they're messy, and they're almost as interesting to kind of examine from this kind of documentary approach as they are to re-explore the content within these films over and over again to kind of see the choices that were made. And I certainly applaud the risk-taking, but not all of this movie works for me, and huge chunks doesn't. Still, The Last Jedi is a great pickup, and it's a great rewatch. I've seen it 4 times now, and what's happening is I'm not liking it more. I'm starting to find the problems a little easier. I'm giving The Last Jedi a 7 out of 10.